Let's get a few things out of the way. Number one, I am the first person on the internet to ever discuss J.K. Rowling in a negative light. I am an innovator of discourse, conversation, and fashion. Number two, my thesis statement is this. I do not think that J.K. Rowling thinks that what she's doing is harmful. And that's the problem. Now, for the rest of this part of the video, I will be addressing Jo Rowling specifically. So, hey, Jo. For anyone else watching, stay tuned, listen up, and leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. But please, just all I ask is that you watch the video before doing so. So for years and years, you were considered a pretty radical feminist. Yay. You've said multiple times that you support women, protecting women's spaces, and the freedoms and rights of female victims of male violence, which again, yay. Where things get messy, as you may have guessed where this is going, is on the subject of trans issues. Jo, you are a pitch-perfect example of somebody who was born in an older generation with incredibly progressive and liberal views, who is now being presented with even further progressive views and is kind of calling enough. This is an incredibly common behavior as people grow older, get a little bit more set in their ways, and feel as if the problems that they fought for are being sidelined, or at least not being seen as the biggest issues. You know, people don't want to be cast aside, they don't want to be silenced, and of course, this is not what's happening. No progressives are trying to silence you for supporting women, nor are they trying to say that women's rights as a social cause are not worth fighting for. So let me make this clear to you, Jo, and to anyone else watching, that I am not going to sit here and try to excuse the things that you've said or done, and I will talk on some of them later in this video specifically, and I'm also not trying to say just, you're old, you're irrelevant, bye. Because despite my best interests as a leftist and somebody with a growing platform, I am not going to call you the devil here. I am going to call you somebody who I believe thinks that her intentions are pure, but is being willfully ignorant of newer targets of harassment for the sake of protecting the causes that you see as a higher social priority. So, let's talk facts. Fact number one, the trans community is a group of incredibly marginalized people who are now more than ever targets of harassment in charges led by the richest and most influential conservatives in the space. People with the most intense audiences who will go to bat for these people over anything. The people I'm talking about, of course, Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, The Quartering, Steven Crowder, anyone else on the far right who believes in the eradication of trans people, or, that is if they believe that they exist in the first place. What you and these commentators have in common, Jo, is that you are pushing narratives that fit your own perspective with little to no context in your sources. While you can find cases of trans women invading women's spaces, or you can hunt down articles about trans women needing to be moved in prison due to their crimes being that of a sexually violent nature, you need to also be aware of the impact that you have, especially in spreading this information from sources owned by the fucking Murdoch family, who you have to understand are not providing all of the context. The prison industrial complex, internationally, is not something that should be the moral bar for societal expectation. I think that you could agree that its lack of resources and its lack of interest in actual rehabilitation makes it a pretty dangerous place for a lot of people. A lot of inmates are sent to prison to be put away, to be cast out of society, not to be helped or reformed. But that could be an entire separate video, so let's focus on the thing that you tweeted about, the case of Isla Bryson. While you can post a story like that of Isla Bryson with the information that agrees with your perspective, you need to supply the context behind that decision. With the move of Isla Bryson, Justice Secretary Keith Brown said this: "We must not allow any suggestion to take root that trans women pose an inherent threat to women. Predatory men are the risk to women. However, as with any group in society, a small number of trans women will offend and be sent to prison. Nobody is defending, as you put it, violent, duplicitous rapists. And the societal norms in prison are, hopefully, obviously, not the benchmark for societal norms outside of prison. There are a small number of trans women who commit sexual violence. There are also a small number of cis women who commit sexual violence. Sexual assault caused by women, according to the Quebec Institute of Public Health, account for about 5% of all offenses. This is, of course, a laughably low number when compared to the men who make up the other 95%. While there are currently not enough studies done regarding transgender people committing sexual violence, it is important to know that trans people are over 4 times more likely to be victims of a violent crime, including rape, sexual assault, and aggravated or simple assault, according to the UCLA School of Law. I understand that your fight is to protect the safety of women, but J.K. Rowling, hear me when I say, trans women are women. The simple fact that you struggle to connect these dots makes it so that you are not only amplifying voices that seek to harm these individuals, but you then relay information that directly causes harm. Let's be real here. You have historically had the internet's worst case of foot and mouth disease for a long time. But now, instead of subtly liking a tweet by a transphobe and calling it a middle-aged moment, you've been going out of your way to post tweets about how women are right to fear that their safety will be compromised by the trans community. You've likened you being called a TERF on Twitter to attack campaigns against women's rights, particularly the right to vote in the example that you tweeted. So let's hit pause. Let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about the word TERF. TERF is a term that means literally trans exclusionary radical feminist. It seems to me, Joe, that you think that the part that people have a problem with is the radical feminist part. It isn't. Yes, there are people like Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro who might take issue with your feminism, and there might be people who are very far on the left who think that your radical feminism doesn't go far enough. But the trans community and the people who support the trans community, their sole issue with you is your lack of intersectionality in your feminism. Now, I know how this looks. I am very aware that I am a cisgendered man sitting here and criticizing a woman's feminism, but I promise that this is not so much of a criticism, Joe, as it is a clarification. And after doing some research and just from following some of your weird comments over the years, it seems publicly that your stance is this. You don't hate trans people, but you want cis women to feel safe. So, there still needs to be separate categorization between trans people and cis people, therefore, trans women cannot be considered women. Here's the thing. Trans women are women. They just are. You can sit here and Matt Walsh me and ask me the definition of what is a woman. You can tell me that trans women will never be real women because they don't have periods or bear children. But then I have to ask, what do you think about cis women who can't do those things either? Does it make them less of women? No, obviously not. At some point, conversations about the rigidity of gender identification becomes entirely unproductive, and the conversation needs to be had about whether it is logical or responsible to continue to attack one of the most attacked groups to protect your beliefs, which become more and more outdated as time ticks on. It is not about the definitions, it is about the people involved, and whether you give a shit about those people. Joe, it seems a while ago, you got stuck. It seems you got stuck in the mindset of doing whatever it takes to protect women's rights, which is not a bad thing. I think it's a very noble cause to put so much effort into your feminism. But if you were to expand your mind that much to accept that trans women are women and be a little bit more inclusionary in your definition, then you would be using your voice to protect so many more people. You could have the influence and impact that you do while also being one of the loudest and most accepted voices of human rights today. It seems like, at the very least, if you want to be clinical about it, a PR no-brainer, right? But weirdly, as time has gone on, you have continued to double down time and time again on this very restrictive mentality. Shouting in support of women, but meaning only cis women. And there's nothing wrong with shouting for the support of cis women and saying that that's the cause that you fight for, but you don't also have to put down trans women in the same breath every single time. Straight up gives a little bit of like all lives matter vibes, you know? Like, yeah, of course, cis women matter, but trans people, especially trans women and especially trans women of color, are one of the most vulnerable communities today. They just are. And imagine if they could get the protection and acknowledgement of one of the biggest and most influential feminists. Wouldn't that be cool? If you want me to be honest, Joanne, I think that the ship may have sailed on you being accepting of trans people. If you want to surprise everyone and come around, then hooray, I guess? But honestly, nobody's waiting on it anymore, and I think for some trans people, even if you did a complete 180, it would still be too little too late. In conclusion, JK Rowling, transgender people existing in cisgender spaces is not a threat to cisgender people. Trans women are not the same as men who are sex offenders, nor are they even men. Switching gears slightly, and then we'll tie it back up in the end, let's talk about Hogwarts Legacy. Joe, this is no longer a video for you. One or two things might be directed to you, but I'm gonna talk to my audience now, so bye. A lot of talk regarding this game came to a head around December 17th when Jesse Gender posted a new tweet saying, "I will not begrudge anyone their love of past works or things they already own that they take comfort in. I own the first 9 movies and all 7 books myself, but any support of something like Hogwarts Legacy is harmful." And this mentality is pretty commonplace, because you can't unwatch movies from your childhood. You can't unread the books. But if your morals and values don't align with a creator like J.K. Rowling and you have trouble separating the art from the artist, you are under no obligation to support an endeavor like Hogwarts Legacy just because it supplied childhood nostalgia for you. Full transparency, I will not be purchasing Hogwarts Legacy. I think that Jesse is correct here. I think that supporting a game that not only gives a big fat royalty check to a transphobe who writes books about how people bully her on Twitter, but also paid developers who were active supporters of Gamergate, a misogynistic campaign against female developers and journalists, is an easy no-no for me. J.K. Rowling went on to respond to this tweet by taking a crack at people who would have rid themselves of anything Potter by saying, "The truly righteous wouldn't just burn their books and movies, but the local library, anything with an owl on it, and their own pet dogs." What the fuck? This is a truly deluded take by somebody who thinks they are owed brain space in the public zeitgeist. A lot of people who held your books dear who are now throwing them away or giving them away or fucking even burning them. These people are avid readers who care about the power of words as an art form. The reason that your harmful rhetoric hits these people the hardest is because they're the type of people who loved your works the most and who understood the themes of your books apparently better than you did. You know, these people aren't burning down the local library because there are books in there that touched Harry Potter books. Like, it's not that deep. These people who are turning on you are not anti-literature or anti-access to literature. They're anti-your views. If you notice a change in lighting, no you didn't. Anyway, so another person tweeted a similar take saying, "If you have the DVDs and books, live your best life. They're already bought and paid for. You can read it on your own time. Nobody needs to know, but just don't stream it. Don't buy the merchandise. And don't buy the games." No judgment for the comfort that it might give your inner child, but as an adult, if you don't support the creator or their property, you don't have to give them money. But again, J.K. Rowling can't help herself and says that it's appalling, and that once you quote a Harry Potter book and the police see your Hufflepuff socks, then that's when they'll get you. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, she's taking this weird stance that trans people, or people who support trans people, or people who just don't support her specifically, are this elitist force that are gonna cancel culture anyone who supports her. But that's not true, and what is true is pretty much the inverse of that. The only reason people associate the game with her transphobic views is because she associates the Harry Potter IP with her views. She has used the success of the Harry Potter IP and royalty checks as the reason to turn around and say, like, well, clearly people agree with me, clearly I'm right, because look at all this fucking money I'm making. Which is insane and wrong and bad. Louis C.K. selling out a show at Madison Square Garden after being canceled does not show that he didn't sexually assault people, or that he was right in doing so. It shows that cancel culture isn't a fucking thing, and canceling people doesn't do anything. It doesn't work. Look, Hogwarts Legacy might be a good game. It might be a great game. It might win game of the whole fucking year. But J.K. Rowling has to understand that nobody is obligated to support the Harry Potter IP just because it's something they enjoyed as a child. She is banking on that nostalgia money coming in, but we do not owe her our money, our time, our attention, just because she created something incredibly influential and it elicits that nostalgic reaction from us. In fact, I have to think that it hurts her brand to pick these petty fights with influencers or randos on Twitter all the time, simply because she gets mad that people are mad at her for being mad at them for existing. J.K. Rowling's audience used to be everyone. Her biggest critics used to be people who believed that witchcraft was real and that demons were writing her books. And now, her biggest critics were once her biggest fans. And you know, for her, her views have stayed the same since we were all 5 years old reading about the boy who lived in the cupboard under the stairs. But the world is changing fast, just as it always has, and I think that scares the shit out of her. Good. Be afraid if it suits you. Because trans people are not going anywhere, and just like all of the homophobes and racists and sexists of the past, history is not going to look on you fondly for being trans exclusionary or for supporting anti-trans legislation. So like I said, personally, I will not be playing Hogwarts Legacy. And honestly, I saw some footage of it on Twitter and, you know, it doesn't look like I'll be missing out on much. So there's that. If you are planning on buying the game because you don't see how this relates back to her personal values, or you're good at separating art from the artist, or you just need it to comfort your inner child, I can't blame you for that. I mean, I can, but you do you, I guess. There are plenty of other fantasy worlds out there. Beautiful, all-encompassing, immersive, magical worlds that can capture the hearts and imaginations of children and adults alike that also weren't written by a TERF. So there's something to think about, I guess. Anywho, keep the conversation going in the comments down below. Feel free to tweet this video to J.K. Rowling. And while you're at it, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you have not done so already. Be sure to hit that bell so you're notified every single time I upload a new video. Get out of my house, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.